I am so excited to share with you guys about History Compass by Pandia Press. I saw it when it first came out a few weeks ago, and I was like, I don't know. And I finally decided to grab it this week. So a couple notes before I show it, before we flip down and look inside of it. 1, if you are watching this in real time, it is on sale for a couple more days. I forget what day it ends. I will put that down there. So if you're considering it for next year, you may want to make sure you watch this now so that you can get it before it goes off sale. This is not a history curriculum in that it's not like a U.S. history thing or world history one. It is definitely a elective and add-on. You can list it as a social studies elective. You could list it in your child on their transcripts in the regular elective section. I think you could even plug it into part of a year-long logic course because there's so much of that in there. So you've got a few options for it. It's listed for grades 7 to 12, but I show you in here where they have they've got suggestions for adapting it if you've got slightly younger kids as well. I would not, though, use it for younger kids if you don't also have older kids that you're using it for at the same time. I would not have suggested if your oldest is like 12. Definitely wait until they're a little bit older. It is super flexible and adaptable. It's written with 32 lessons, with the idea being a semester-long course. We are going to do it as a year-long course with 1 lesson a week. And that's something else I suggest is doing it either way, but it is a semester's length of material. Now, as I go through this, I'm going to first show you the layout and just a general overview of it. And then I will dig into more specifics about the different lessons and why I'm so excited to use it next year. So they have the student guide and then the teacher guidance. And it's definitely not a traditional teacher's guide because there's no real answers in this. So I'm going to do a quick look through for this, and then we'll look into the student version. Like so many curriculum, it starts off with a letter to the teacher. Now this one includes information about using this in a co-op setting. So if you are in a co-op, I think this would be a fantastic one to do together. So they give you some information about that, about adapting it to your student. And they have a section about building young historians. If you have a family where you've got kids like 5th, 6th grade and up, this would be a fantastic one to do together or do parts of it together at least. So they give you some information about adapting it for a little bit younger. Even if you have little kids younger than 5th-ish grade, I think they can definitely sit in and absorb a lot of information, but the work itself would be really hard for them to do. Something that I like about this one is that it does not rely much on video and website such. There is some with the research, but that's not where its primary focus is. The primary focus is the text itself. So that's something I appreciate about it. We love to use online resources, but it's nice to have a break from that as well. And there's a section about assessment, how to do it, an example or rubric. There's also one in the back in the appendix, so I'll show you that. One other thing I wanted to show you was that they do include information about for your transcript and course descriptions. I really appreciated this because one less one that I have to write myself. So they give you a course title to use. They list it as a half credit, and then a semester-long course, and then a nice course description. They also give you, if you want to make it if you want to make this an honors level course, they give you information on what you need to do to bump it up, because there are several bonus activities throughout the material. And then here's the student material itself. Now this is a big curriculum. I think there were 185 pages in it. So it is a lot to print. There is not a printed version of it already, so you will have to either print or use it on an iPad or from your computer. It is in color, but you could definitely print this in black and white and not lose anything. So if you wanted to send it to one of the printing companies, maybe cheaper to do it that way. I like that there's decoration, but not a lot. So on the pages, they all have the same little strip. So it's just one little strip, and I appreciate a little bit, but without it being overdone, especially if you're printing, that definitely helps with the cost. So we've got the table of contents, an introduction for the students, and this is a really good introduction. I definitely think that it's one that you should make sure to assign. There are 3 units in here. The first one is about historical thinking, and then there's historical research, and the last one is historical writing. Every lesson has a pretty similar format from lesson to lesson, which is really nice. There's an introduction. There are little subsections that are pretty clearly distinguishable. However, if you print this in black and white, the thing that's going to stand out about these is that the font is smaller. In color, I don't know if you can see, but they're kind of a navy color, and it's easy to distinguish. They look different, clearly, between the font size and the color printed this way. If you print in black and white, it may be a little harder. So you may just need to go over that with your student if they don't use textbooks a lot. So their reading section, and each lesson is a couple of pages of reading, but you can see like this is the text, this is the text, this section, and this section. So while it is 3 pages of reading, or there's reading on 3 pages, it's not like it's 3 full pages of reading. So if you have a kiddo who doesn't love to read a lot, this is still a pretty manageable load. So then we have the assignment section. It's all clearly labeled. And this one's about the history of history. So in lesson 1, the activity is, or the assignment is to write some questions. Now, you could absolutely do these orally if you have a child who doesn't want to write, or you want to use as a group activity or just an oral discussion like while you're on the go in the car. That's easy to do with this. And then it begins the first lesson of the project that I showed you, where it sets the stage for what they're going to be doing and gives the students some questions to think about to start building the foundation for that project. And then again with lesson 2, here's the text, text, text. And that's about the length for all of them, or at least the ones I've looked at so far. And then we have an assignment section, more questions. Again, you can absolutely do these orally, written, however you want to do it. Now, lesson 3 does have more pages because they have a lot of pictures with it. And then again, the next assignment. And now that I've shown you how it's formatted, I wanted to show you some of the things about the lessons themselves that has me really excited to teach it next year. So lesson 1 starts with the history of history. What is history? What is prehistory? Just the basics. Now in lesson 2, they build upon that a little bit by adding in the topic of mythology. And you might think, as I was doing, that like mythology, that's myths, that's fiction. But it points out how much mythology built upon what was actually going on at the time. I'm not sure why I never really made that connection. So no, we weren't fighting sea dragons and having gods coming from the moon or such. But the stories often reflected true people or events that were real life events inspired different myths. So I just thought that was an interesting point, and how much it also tells us about the culture of different places. So now that we have the foundation of what is history, and then how mythology and history intertwine, now we're building onto the importance of history. And why is it important? Such things like photos. How does that tell us what we know about history and about things like the human condition? Understanding history makes us better citizens, and why? We've got a picture here of voting from the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So it slowly builds that foundation for us. Then we get into historiography, which is the study of the methods of research that historians use, and how that changes, how what we know about history changes in the way that we view it as we progress, and our thinking changes, and we become more aware. For example, they talk somewhere in here about Christopher Columbus and how we write about him now has changed as we have a better awareness of, I'm not say better awareness, but a better understanding of his impact and the impact of people colonization on the United States. So I really like this addition to it because that's not something we usually get. And then I love that they've included oral tradition and oral history. Again, something that gets left out of history often is the impact that oral tradition and history give us, and how that impacts written history, specifically for cultures who haven't had a long written history but have had a really long oral history tradition. So this foundation of how we write and learn about history, I'm so impressed by it. It goes into archaeology, side note. But the one thing that I don't love that I found so far is that when we have an activity, they do include the nice list of materials, but there's no other place where there's a materials list. I really wish they had gathered this information, put it in the teacher guidance packet, included which ones were regular activities, which ones are bonus activities, and just made it a little easier so that it's, easier to find what we're going to need. So I would say that's the only downfall I've seen so far of things I don't like about it. And lesson 8 is about the ways of thinking about history, as far as like time periods, eras, themes, but more specifically, things when we get into themes like, what does progress and decline really mean? What does society mean? How does religion and ethics influence what we know about history? I really, really love this section on the ways of thinking about history. Section 2 is about research, so it, again, lays that foundation of historical research. And then it builds on it by talking about different types of history sources. So primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, and not just emphasizing like primary sources are your best one. Well, sometimes, but not always. And so why are primary sources not always the best choice? Or such, that kind of thing. I really like that discussion of it. The assignment in this section, they are given 6 different sources with questions to answer about each one to analyze what kind of a source this is, what are its pros, what are its cons, what can we learn from it, what information is missing. I really like analysis of sources is something that I've not done a fantastic job of teaching, so I think this will be super helpful, and definitely one of those topics that students can take those skills and use them in other subjects as well. Lesson 12 talks about searching for sources, and it gives some really good information about searching online. So while most high school kids are going to be familiar with using the internet, it goes into just a little more detail and gives some little tips that they may not have discovered along the way. They also have several lessons focusing on using different types of resources like organizations and timelines, maps. There's a whole lesson on documenting and citing sources. Super, super important, especially if you have a kiddo who's going to go on to college. And then the third section on historical writing. This is going to build them up to do a longer essay project. So again, back to the foundation, writing like a historian. Then we go into choosing a topic, developing your thesis, research. This will be a fantastic add-on to writing, and definitely one that this will be a really nice add-on to reinforce writing skills for essays. Outlining, I mean, this is building an essay, all the things that we teach in other courses, but now we're focusing on those skills, implementing them for history. Short essay. This goes along with the project that they've been doing. The information on the long essay, they do a really nice job laying out the format, details of it, questions to help them get started and stay focused. I think I'm excited about this part of it because while my kiddos write a lot, we've not done anything longer than a page. So this will be really nice. Well, Ben's done a couple, but not many. So lesson 27 kind of ends it. Like that's where their long essay is. And then in 28, they talk about presentations, debates. 29 was about writing for websites and blogs. 30 about projects. And then 31 talks about what's expected out of them for high school and college level history. And then in 32, they talk about history in the field. So if you have a kiddo who might be interested in continuing their study about history, what different ways can they use it, career paths, etc., which I love because I don't, other than being a professor or someone who works at a history museum, I don't know what you do with the history degree. So, like I said, here's the appendix. Everything's well labeled for it. Here's the essay rubric. You could absolutely create your own, but I really like this version. I've looked over it and I think it's really good. It is written to the student. Here's one about presentation. And that's it. I am so excited to use this next year, you guys. I've got a link down in the down bar. And if you want to see what else I have used for high school, go click on the playlist on your screen and I'll see you over there.